La 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 la. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time watching me, thank you so much for joining us in this one. In this video, I am going to be showing you how to draft the patterns for an off-shoulder fitted bodice. And this is a request that I've gotten a lot since I made my birthday dress back in August. You guys seem to really like that dress. Thank you so much for the love. So I'm going to be showing you how to make the top half pattern. The bottom half is fairly easy to sort of figure out because all I did was multiply my waist measurement by 4 and gathered that back into the waistline of the top half. So if you want to see how I made this pattern, keep watching. If you haven't subscribed already, join the fam. You're welcome anytime, any day. Please subscribe so you get notified every single week whenever I have new videos up. So enough waffling, let's jump straight into this tutorial. These are the tools I'm going to be using. So I got myself my trusty set square and curved ruler, as well as pattern paper, scissors, pen, pencil, and an eraser. So I like using the set square for those straight lines and the pattern master to just perfect those curved lines. So I'm also going to use this vest because it's like a perfect fit for me, and to be easy to trace out the silhouette I need for the front and for the back. And because it fits me quite snugly, I won't have to worry about if the bodice is going to be fitted on me or not. So the first thing we're going to do is to trace out the back of this thing. And what I'm going to do here is just fold it in half in such a way that all I get is half of the back of this vest. And because it doesn't have sleeves, I don't have to bother about the fit of the sleeve here. So I'm going to use a pencil to make dashed lines and just roughly trace around. This doesn't need to be perfect because I'm going to go back again with my pattern master and my set square to refine those lines. So I'm going to mark on notches as well, just to make it a whole lot easier when it's time to create the sleeves. So the next thing I'm going to do is decide where I want my waistline to sit. I decided 30 centimeters from the shoulder line, and I'm going to repeat this for the front of the vest. So folding again in half, and I'm going to pin in any excess that would create any inaccuracy for this pattern. So what I want to get here is the front outline of this vest, and I'm going to just trace around roughly and just make it nice and neat. So no pressure, guys, no pressure. It doesn't have to be perfect, as long as it's clear enough to go back again to refine with your pattern master and set square. Because the first lines I created were dashed lines, I would really need to make these lines very visible and clear, so when it's time for me to create the different panels I need, it is easier to do. So once I'm done refining the lines for the back panel, I'm going to draw out the waistline and just make those notches way more obvious. I'm going to repeat the same thing for the front panel as well that I've traced out, and just mark down any points that are important and write which side is the front and which side is the back, as well as indicating the waistline very clearly, because this is going to be important when it's time to create the darts. So the next thing that we're going to be working on is to decide how low you want your off shoulder to be. I'm going to decide on about 10 centimeters from the shoulder point, because that's not too low and it's still obvious that it's off the shoulder at that point. So I'm going to mark that on the pattern as well, and then just draw a line across the half front panel which I have made, and just make that very visible that I took out 10 centimeters. I'm going to repeat the same thing on the back panel so I know they're symmetrical and the same for both the front and the back. So once that is done, I'm going to create the sweetheart neckline, which was one of the main features of this dress when I made it back in August. So what I've done here is I've marked 4 centimeters down the center front, and I'm going to draw a curve from that 4 centimeter mark to about half of the shoulder line that I have created, and just refine that with the pattern master. So once you sort of cut that line on a fold, the other side is going to be mirrored, and you would have that sweetheart neckline that you want. So once I'm done doing this, I am going to create the dart, and to do this I'm going to mark the middle point of the waistline and then mark 1 centimeters on each side of that middle point. And what I'm going to do is to create a triangle. This is not very accurate, I stand corrected, but it worked for me. So I'm going to draw a triangle from one of those 1 centimeter points to the hem as well as to the shoulder. So what you have there is you are creating a dart that would take in any excess that you have around the waistline, because what you want that waist to be is to be fitted. So when you cut out the 2 panels and stitch them back together, you're going to have a seam across that point, which is the main feature of any fitted bodice pattern. So I thought talking through this process would be much easier as I am making it. So this is what the front looks like so far, and I've created my sweetheart neckline. And what this dart really helps to do is to make the bodice more fitted. But in order for that to work, you would have to trace out this panel here. That's this side piece. I think I might need to retrace these lines out so it's clearer because the pencil is quite faint. So I would need to trace out this side panel, which is 1, all of that piece, and trace out this other panel which has the sweetheart neckline in front, and that is the one labeled 2. So when you join the 2 of them up here, it creates more fit in the bodice, and that's what really makes that place like really tight and fitted on your body. So I'm doing this particular pattern to my size, but if you trace your original like template from your top, it should fit you as well. This is not any kind of professional way to make this pattern, but it worked for me. That's why I'm just showing you guys as well. So I did the same thing for the front, and I'm going to trace out here and here. For the back, wait, I did the same for the back. What am I saying? I'm going to trace it out for the back of the bodice. So as for the sleeve, what we're going to do is to trace out from here to there and from there to there. I would show you later on so it makes more sense. So now that I've traced off the back armhole, I'm going to draw out a line using the ruler, just a straight line, which is going to be the width of my top arm. And from the end of that line, I'm going to trace out the front. This is such a cheat way to create sleeves from adapted or altered bodies. So I'm just going to quickly do that and continue with the rest of the process. The top arm measurement is 30 centimeters, and what I'm going to do is to draw a straight line from the back armhole or sleeve curve and just indicate where that like line ends and mark the middle point of the line as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is to trace the front sleeve curve from the point where that line ends. So what we're going to end up creating is like a sleeve that has a front and a back sleeve curve, and it has like a top arm dimension, which is what is going to wrap around the top of your arm when you have that sleeve on. So I'm just going in again to refine those lines with my pattern master because they're usually not perfect whenever I trace them out like that. So I'm also going to draw an extension from that sleeve point which I traced over from the bodice. I'm going to do that for the front and the back and decide how long I want the sleeve to be. At this point, you can make the sleeve flare, you can make it fitted, you can make it bell, you can decide however you want the sleeve to be. The choice is yours. I just settled for a basic straight sleeve. So the next thing I'm going to do is to write down what this is and how many I need, and then add a 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way around. I'm also going to mark on my notches, the center point of the sleeve, the front and the back notches, so I know once I cut this out and I want to cut it on fabric, I sort of know where the notches go and how many of this piece I need. So the next thing I'm going to do is to trace off the different panels of this, and to make this not very confusing, I'm going to shade out the parts I want to trace out and leave the parts that I don't want to trace out sort of blank. So when I put paper over this, I know I need to trace out the sort of shaded bit. That's not shading, but that shading in my head. So I'm going to trace off that panel, the other panel, and leave that bit in the middle off, because the idea is when you stitch them back on together, they make that sort of front or back panel or piece. So I'm going to trace this off using my ruler, and the quick way to do this is just to mark meeting points and then just connect those meeting points with your ruler or pattern master. So I'm quickly going to trace out the different panels I need, and after tracing them off, I'm going to add 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way around, because you know these pattern pieces are going to be sewn together. So don't forget to add on your waistline, your notches. Those things are really important because they help to define the pattern and make them more clearer for yourself and even for someone else when it's time to use it. So I'm just adding around all the seam allowances I need, and I'm going to do the same process for the front and the back of this pattern. Okay, so this is the back panel all traced out. I just realized I made a mistake, but I will explain that later on. So I have traced out the 2 sides that make up the back, and this is panel 1 over here and panel 2. So as you can see, because they're separate, they're going to be joined in the middle to create that really fitted bodice that you want. The back, I wasn't supposed to put a seam allowance there because we want to cut it on a fold. But if you're going to fix a zip, then that is correct. But if you just want like 1 piece for the center back panel, you wouldn't have a seam allowance here because you want this piece of the fabric to be continuous to the other side. So, but if you're fixing a zip, then this is right. So I'm just going to leave it like that for now, and remember to make any adjustments if I am going to be doing it any differently. So as you can see, I've marked all my notches for the armhole, for the waistline, and just ensuring that this is easy to understand when it's time to actually use it. So I'm going to repeat the same process for the front and trace out the 2 panels and add all the seam allowance I need. This is going rather well, better than I. So as you can see, I am done tracing out the panels for the front, for the back, and for the sleeves. So that means we're done. Oh my god, we are done. Oh, we are done. This went much better than I anticipated, and that just makes me so happy. So the next thing I'm going to do now is just explain what I've done. So as for the front here, it does not have a seam allowance because you want to cut that front piece on the fold to really get that, you know, sweetheart neckline that you want around there. So you cut the center front on a fold as written here because you want this to be duplicated on the other side to make the sweetheart neckline that you want. And you would need 2 pieces. You would need 1 piece. What's wrong with me today? You would need 1 piece, and for the side you would need 2 pieces, 1 to join on each side of these darts to make the front panel complete, as you can see here. As for the back, as I explained earlier on, you would need 2 pieces of each. I just wanted to correct that to make the back panel. So I'm going to cut this out, and when I'm cutting, I'm going to cut on this second line here, not on the inner one, because you want to retain the seam allowance. So I'm going to cut along this line, cut around this piece, that piece, and the other ones to complete all the pieces you need for this fitted off shoulder bodice pattern. These are all the pattern pieces cut out and sort of laid out side by side. So that's for the front, you would need 1 piece cut in the fold and 2 pieces to go with that. As for the back, you would need 2 each. As for the sleeve, you would need 2 pieces for each side of the dress or the blouse. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you learned something. I hope I was able to explain it in a way that you understood. Please let me know your thoughts down below. If you have any questions, suggestions, or ideas, I am open to them as well. And until my next video, have a beautiful morning, afternoon, and evening wherever you are. Bye.